Rita Escarpa performing Six Waltzes by Fernandez.
What?
Don't. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, May 8th, 2017 version of the Public Works Finance Committee of the Moscow City Council. Attending today is Walter Steed on my right and Gina Taruccio on my left. Gary Riedner is representing the city staff, and Sarah Banks is also at the table here. First order of business here is approval of the minutes from the previous Public Works Finance Committee meeting from April 24th. Entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
I don't believe I was in attendance, so I'll pass and let you all do it.
Abstain. I think we can go ahead and pronounce them approved as written. Item number 2 on today's agenda is the disbursement report for April 20th. I'm sure Gary and Sarah are going to tell us all about that.
I'll delegate that to Sarah.
Yep. Okay, and looking at the expenditures for April, the total came to $2,270,475. The most notable expenditures are actually the purchase of our fire truck for $514,893, and then we had our last payment to Presnell Gage in the amount of $13,000 to finish up our FY16 audit. Other than that, everything's pretty straightforward, mostly just monthly expenditures from there.
So we had to pay the full amount of the fire truck in order to get them to start building it? They don't just get a deposit and then pay it when they deliver it?
We had different options. The way for us to, I believe it was about an $18,000 discount, is if we paid it up front. It is to Pierce, which is a long-standing fire truck supply company, so we felt that the risk of them not being able to deliver was going to be pretty slim. And it kept $18,000 in the coffers of the city, so we thought that was a good deal.
Yeah, that's a good return on investment there, probably. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Then we got a few receipts, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about receipts.
About receipts?
We had some. Isn't that part of your report?
Yep. Everything else is pretty straightforward. We just had our monthly expenses and our monthly contracts, and other than the payment to Presnell Gage, there wasn't anything else that was really standing out.
Do you have any questions about individual?
Yeah. Oh, I just wondered on what do we get that's like $4,000 in other? What is that? On the receipts part, the money, the income side of the ledger. The last thing over on the very top line.
On the very top line. You know, I'd have to look into it. I don't know off the top of my head what's in the other, but I can look at it and let you know.
It's just a matter of idle curiosity, but it seems like we get $4,000 that we have no idea where it comes from. It's kind of
Which page are you looking at?
The yellow and white one.
I don't have any idea. Well, I could maybe conjecture about that.
$39.87.50.
$39.87.50. On the very top line.
$39.87.50. Okay. Yeah, without breaking it down, I could get that pretty quickly, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Just a matter of curiosity.
Sure.
Yeah, it could be refunds and reimbursements. It could be return of deductible on insurance proceeds. It's just things that aren't specifically accounted for in any of the lower funds.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like a accounting?
We would like a
that was?
detailed account.
Sure.
Just if it's not any.
It's not. It's in here already, and so I can just pull it out and I'll bring it back to you.
Cool.
Yeah.
All
Other
right.
than that, you have any other ones? No?
Anybody else have anything else for the?
You guys have to sign.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
We will endeavor to be better prepared next time.
Time is not of the essence in that matter. So
If it was several $100,000, it would have been.
Yeah, it might have.
Yeah, I
of
probably
note.
would have known that one for sure.
Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is the 933 and 951 Meadow Street lot line adjustment, and Ryan Cash is going to tell us about that. So apparently,
Sure.
John Davis wants to move his property line over and
I put out anything.
build a garage, eh?
That's correct, Ms. Councilperson. So, council members and Mr. Eaton, again, Ryan Cash with the Community Development Department. Before you, I have a lot adjustment request for 951 Meadow Street. And if I can direct your attention directly behind you, we've got a PowerPoint presentation prepared for you. All right. So, as stated before on the record, this is for a lot adjustment for essentially 3 feet into a neighboring property to the north of 951. And here we are with the street view. A little bit hard to tell where the subject property line is, but essentially we are looking for, we are looking for that overall property line to the right. So again, it's on this particular location right there. So here we have the subject property. Just to orient you, the Joseph Ball fields are directly to the east, correction, to the west of the subject property. To the south, we have Joseph Street and Meadow Street along those locations. The adjoining property is directly to the north of the subject property. And here we have the zoning map with a little bit more detail of how zoning is laying out. Both properties fall into the R2 zoning district. And again, you can see the Joseph Ball fields to the west, and directly across the street we have R3 and then R1 over off of Shelby Lane. So this is the principal idea of the existing square footage of these lots. Essentially, the subject property's beginning square footage is 10,953 square feet, and the subject property that they're looking to acquire is 126.09 linear feet of the northern property boundary, and the adjoining neighbor to the north has an existing square footage lot of 11,809 square feet. So in principle, essentially the northern property line is going to be acquiring 3 feet of additional depth into the southern property line at 951. Overall total square footage for the new property for the subject and the applicant is 11,334 square feet, and the reduction of the affected property owner to the north is 11,428 square feet. Legal description: the applicant's lot is located at Lot 1, Block 1, Milgard's Addition, and the affected property's lot is Lot 2, Block 2 of Milgard's Addition. Legal description: the lot line adjustment for acquiring an additional 3 feet of the property to the north of the applicant's northern parcel line. It's essentially 3 feet deep to the north, as well as 127 feet of the parcel line. The total square footage increase of the applicant's land would be 381 square feet. The original square footage of the lot, again as stated before, is 10,953. After adjustment is 11,334 square feet. The affected property to the north has a reduced southern side yard setback from 12 feet to 9 feet. The northern side yard setback remains the same at 15 feet. Again, the total square footage reduction is 381 square feet for the affected property. The original square footage of the lot is 11,809 square feet, and after adjustment is 11,428 square feet. This is the applicant's site plan of essentially what's going to be going on. Again, you can see the existing house, the overall dimensions on the lot, and then the proposed 3-foot addition to the parcel to the north. The overall zoning district for R2, the minimum lot width is 60 feet for single-family dwellings, 50 feet for lots with alley access. The minimum lot area is 7,000 square feet for single-family dwellings, and the max building height is 30 feet. Setbacks is 15 feet or 20 feet from the garage facing the street. The rear setback is 20 feet, and the side yard setback is 5 feet minimum. The sum of 2 sides shall not be less than 15 feet for lots 55 or more in width, or 10 feet for lots less than 55 in width. Staff's recommendation is recommend the approval of the lot adjustment request with no conditions.
Thank you, Ryan. Seems like a pretty straightforward thing, and everybody's in agreement. The selling property owners is okay with it, and so I can see no reason why we can't move this forward. Mr. Steed?
I can't either. I just have a process question that came up out of Mr. Davis's letter, which was very thorough and explained everything to me. But Ron, in the next to last paragraph, he makes the statement that, and this was a May 3rd letter, he says, I will be filing the quitclaim deed tomorrow, May 4. and am prepared to begin construction upon city approval of this request. If he can do a quitclaim of this property between himself and his neighbor, where does the city fit into this? If we say no today, which we're not, but if we were to say no today, what happens?
Good afternoon.
Mr. Hall, welcome.
Right now, if he did a quitclaim deed, we would still be platted, his property line would be still where it is, but he would have an interest in his neighbor's property over 3 feet. So he wouldn't be able to build because the property line would still be where it is platted on the map. What we're doing, what you're processing is saying that you're agreeing to move that line, and so that will be where the setbacks
Even though
kicks
the
in.
property has already changed hands?
Well, it's just the interest in property has changed hands. The lots are still going to be recorded until you change the plat as they are today, whether somebody has an interest in that property or not. The quitclaim deed is just giving them the interest into the property and may diminish that value or of the property that, allowed them to do that.
Okay. Like I say, I have no problem with it. I think it's quite straightforward.
I think this is a consent agenda item. Mr.
Certainly.
Reedner. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to item number 4, the 6th and Jackson realignment bid results and contract award. Bob Bovell's going to tell us about that. Looks like he brought a team with him.
I brought help.
Yeah? Some hired thugs to make sure you get your way, I'm sure.
Okay. Before you today, we have a bid award that we want to try to move forward with for the 6th and Jackson Street realignment. On May 2nd, we opened bids for this project. We had one bidder, and it was ML Albrights and Sons. And the bid tabulation for that project should have been attached in the packet. In that bid tab, the bid came in higher than the estimate, and so what we're working at doing right now is trying to renegotiate some of the items that came up a little higher than what we would have anticipated. And so what we're looking to do is, in a fashion to move forward with the process to be able to get the construction started, we want to try to look at approving the bid award for an amount not greater than the engineer's estimate as we continue to try to renegotiate some of these prices with the one contractor, the one respondent that we had. Our engineer's estimate for the project was $268,306.50. So some of the items I think that we might look at adjusting would be the illumination system, the tree well installation, and I think those were probably the 2 items that we were going to work on, either decreasing the scope or something along those lines.
The illumination one is the one that stands out as $40,000 difference between the engineer's estimate and the bid, so there must be some sort of misunderstanding about the parameters there, I would think.
Right, and I think that maybe with a little bit more clarification, we could probably try to adjust that price a little bit between.
Have y'all talked to the contractor yet?
Yes.
And what's he saying?
Well, the main discussion that we had with M. Albright when we talked with the prime was there was confusion on the illumination system. All the specifications were there, but there was a lack of subs, electrical subs for him to get at the time. So he had asked one that had a small window to actually look at it and still had questions about it, which we're working on clarifying the various questions right now.
So you are thinking this was a safety bid?
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what it's going to cost me to do this, but if I do it for $40,000 more, I'll be okay?
Yeah. And with discussions with the contractor right now is with further clarification on various items, he feels that going through the change order process, that we could bring things down a lot further.
And I want to follow up on, if I may, the change order comment, but first, is the same true of the tree well price?
Yes.
They didn't have a good number?
He didn't feel he had all the information necessary to get a good price for that, which we're working on getting him the remaining information he needed.
Well, if I may continue, if what you're asking us to do today is approve it if the engineer's an estimate amount, you're not in the change order business. I mean, you're talking about contracting for a number equal to the engineer's estimate amount. So which are we doing here? Gary, you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I can explain a little bit. One of the reasons it's here today, Public Works would have preferred to wait 2 weeks, but as you know, this is a project that is proceeding as part of the closure of almost the entire 6th Street corridor from Jackson to Deacon. So the idea was not to delay it too much. Because there was only one bidder, there was a little bit of flexibility in talking to the respondent bidder. He indicated that, as I think Bob and Scott have said, that the person who put the bid together needed additional information. So as bidders are wont to do, they tend to look at the most conservative side. Les thought that there was some opportunity to get him to hone that down a little bit. And just wanted the opportunity to do that. What we thought we could do is hopefully button that up this week and be able to bring it to City Council at next council meeting. So I think you're right. It's not a change order, it's a change in scope of the project. Whether you exclude the tree wells and the lighting out of that and pursue that differently, so it would just change the scope of the contract.
So what, would you prefer that we just pass this to council so y'all have more time? Would that
Pretty
help?
much. Yes, exactly.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Yeah, we didn't want to bring it to council cold without having some background to it.
Okay, because I don't know that we've got anything here we can approve.
Yeah, there's
Without-
nothing we can vote
without
on here.
Without putting you in a box you don't want to be put in.
Certainly. That's fine. As I said, we just wanted the opportunity to come to council on Monday.
Yeah, it certainly seems clear that there's
Needs some
enough
work.
room in a couple of these things that because of the disparity in the bids, there's got to be some misunderstanding that can be worked out. And we can get it within, get it down somewhere close to the engineer's estimate with the 10% contingency that most projects have on top of them. So I think we can make that happen.
And I think if the committee wants to move it forward to council, leave it on the regular agenda so
Yes.
the engineers can flesh it out, that would be the best.
Yeah, and we'll just effectively declare it not quite ready for decision and move it on to council to see if it'll be ready by then.
That would be fine.
Yeah, I think we can just say we're moving it forward to council for consideration pending further information. Yeah?
That works.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
A decision not to make a decision.
Yeah, we decided to kick the can down the road and have the decision be made at a later date. Right? Okay, item number 5 on today's agenda is accept Bill Park's donation towards the purchase of Indian Hills Park playground equipment. Dwight, tell us about that.
You ask.
All right, well, good afternoon. This is one of those that we really like to come to council with, and Mr. Bill Parks is, you know, a friend of the Indian Hills Park process, has asked to donate $25,000 toward the playground equipment that we are planning this summer to purchase and install. And to take that, we need to go through council to accept it. As you know, Mr. Parks, he also helped with the purchase of one of the lots that became part of this park and has basically been one of the champions of the park, and appreciative of it, and we would ask that the council accept his donation.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem with moving this forward to council, but I would like to see it on the regular agenda because I would like to see Mr. Parks get some recognition in a televised way.
Okay, and I have up on your screen, you've seen it several times, but that's the Indian Hills Park design and the playground area.
A question, if I might. Dwight, at the last council meeting, we approved a program for improving undeveloped parks in the city. In that, there were a list of parks. This was one of them, and there were some amounts in there for estimates of what it would cost. Is this $25,000 to add to that estimate, or is this 25 going to enhance what you had in mind since you didn't know this number when you put that estimate together? Does that make, that's not a very good question, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes, and sort of a yes and a no. This particular park, as I also described, some of these properties have issues, the properties themselves. This one has challenges, topographical challenges, and we're going to need every bit of this just to keep this thing in check. And the pathway starting on the eastern side going up, that will be have to be designed so that it meets ADA standards. And that's, and not to mention the top of the hill there has to be leveled off in order to handle this. So this would have come in over the 120 that we had estimated.
So this money will help you bring it into reality?
Yes.
Okay.
The number on the
there you go.
Group of parks that we talked about last time says $140,000 for that park. Total, yeah. So if we had another 25, that would mean that you'd have 165 to work with, is how you're thinking about that.
Yes.
Right.
And of course, we'll try to do what we can to keep that under that, but
okay,
we do know it'll have some challenges there.
And I think it's a good idea to do it in open session.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Thank you, Dwight. Okay, item number 6 is kind of a reconsideration item. The commitment of Hamilton funds for the park playground equipment. I think when we looked at this before, everybody was in favor of the deal. We just wanted some clarification about where the interest money in the interim while we're working on this project would go and have a clear delineation of that.
Well, would you like the abbreviated version?
Certainly.
We did add into the resolution that any future interest earnings on this would remain in the fund and go toward operations offset to the Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center.
And that's what they've been done for the past however many years, correct? Mr. Steve?
I think I was the one that first asked what about the interest, and then you caught on to it and said, me too, what about the interest? And that's when the mayor suggested this be tabled and sent to this committee to be talked about this week. Dwight, the premise that brought this item to the council last week was that the current interest being earned on the Hamilton funds is so small that to keep it just generating, I think it's now about $24,000 a year toward the HERT maintenance is really just not a sustainable way to use those funds in the way that Mr. Hamilton intended them to be used. Therefore, y'all proposed to the council, and the council indicated last week that we were very interested in spending $1.9 million of the $2.9 approximate corpus that's in the Hamilton Fund, with one having already been set aside for the ice rink. 1.9 toward development of all this parkland we've accumulated over the years and have no money to develop. If the premise is that that's why we're going to do this, in other words, the interest is not really any money worth having. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's just not really worth anything that way. I came around to wondering why should that interest shouldn't just go to the parks as well, instead of continuing to spend off $24,000 until you start pulling down the principal to do the developments. So, I saw this as an either or between putting the money toward parks and letting that money accumulate as well for the parks, or putting it toward the Hamilton Fund. If we take it, toward the Hamilton, the rec center maintenance. If we don't put it toward rec center maintenance, we've got to come up with it from taxpayer revenues. It's got to come out of the general fund. We have never, well, not never, in my memory, we've not used tax revenues to develop parks. We've not really. We've used them to maintain them. We cut the grass, we rebuild them, we've used them to replace some playgrounds and so forth. But we really don't use tax monies to develop parks. I just think I lean toward wanting to put this toward playground money, as opposed toward continuing to put it toward the maintenance of the HERC and pick up that maintenance out of tax monies.
Mr. Meunier.
I would say to the contrary, that tax money is always used to develop parks. We get some monies for parks development, or at least parks property from developers, but and we'll come across a grant now and then, but typically parks are developed with general fund tax dollars. That's the only place where they typically are funded from, in the absence of like Mr. Parks donating $25,000, so on and so forth. Again, reliving history a little bit, when the original Hamilton funds were dedicated to the HERC, and the idea from that city council in 2003 was that those funds, the interest generated on those funds, would allow us to issue certificates of participation, and the corpus of the money would stay at $8 million in the bank and generate enough interest to pay the certificates of participation, as well as to offset the operational costs of the Hamilton Indoor Rec facility. That worked really well when interest rates were 5 or 6%. And the council at that time, I remember Steve Bush, Mike Thomas, and Jack Hill were adamant about the fact that they didn't want the operations to be put off on the taxpayer. So that's why they came up with Resolution 2003-03 that said essentially maintenance, operation, and construction of the HERC would be paid for with interest paid on the Hamilton funds. When the interest rates changed about 2008, 2009, then council considered a proposal to pay off the certificates of participation, because the amount of interest that was being paid on the corpus of the Hamilton Fund was less than the amount of money we were paying on the certificates of participation. And in fact, the Hamilton Fund was being reduced by that difference every year.
It was evaporating.
Exactly. Council made the decision, we did that. It removed about $2.9 million, something like that, from the corpus of the Hamilton Fund, which compounded the situation where you're getting 1%, 1.5% on the money. Now you're doing it on half the corpus. So that was reduced even more. Council then authorized to go and get some of the foregone tax amount to offset the costs of operation of the Hamilton Indoor Rec facility. So we replaced the Hamilton interest revenues with tax revenues by using a portion of the foregone tax amount. Taxes authorized but not taken in previous years. So you're absolutely right. $24,000 is not making an appreciable dent in the operations of the Hamilton Indoor Rec facility. The annual is $181,000. So, but we also have a general fund that's pressured every year. Parks and Rec is essentially paid through the general fund except for some recreational monies. So you're in that situation where do you build capital and penalize operations? and then levels of service are jeopardized. It'll evaporate as Dwight's people put parks together. We understand that. But I'd rather feel that impact over a period of years while keeping with the intent of the council in 2003 than have that continue to build up the fund. There are no restrictions on the interest revenues generated by the Hamilton Fund, only on the Hamilton Fund corpus itself, which is why we ended up doing this in the first place.
But we have kept them in the parks
Oh, yeah.
global area.
Exactly.
I mean, we've not used them to pave streets or build parking lots or to buy a fire truck.
No, sir. As long as the operations of the HERC cost more than the interest generated and the additional taxes council authorized, and we're well beyond that. So, yes, they've all been used to support parks and recreation, which is why that language is in there.
Yeah, my main concern about this whole thing is just that we had a clear picture of where that money was supposed to go, so there's no question about it in the future. And I think it's money coming out of one pocket or another to do the same things over time. So it really makes no difference as long as we say up front that's how we're going to use it.
Well, I think it does make a difference in that $24,000 a year. What was your program on the parks development that Jim had on his screen here a second ago? How many years?
Well, it didn't say how
Did it
many
show
years.
how many
It
years
just
it's
shows
gonna
how
take you
many
to do
parks.
that?
And
Yeah, just the parks.
if we did one a year, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4,
10 years.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
If you do one per year.
10. Yeah, 10.
No, so you're talking $250,000.
Wait. Yeah, but it's not going to stay at that because every year you're going to reduce it by $150,000.
Yeah, by
So
something less.
Yeah, something less than that. And at some point, so then we're using more tax money to pay for the maintenance of the HERC, and then at some point we have to come up with the money to finish the parks. So it all has to come out of the same big pool of
If the
funds.
council at that time would come up with the money to finish the parks.
Right. At some point,
Which we've never done until this point when this program was proposed.
Mr. Reedner would disagree.
Yeah,
with you.
I would say that this is the first time that Parks has brought a plan with a funding mechanism behind it. I mean, it's always been if you want to issue a bond or you want to take additional capital monies and put toward it. This is the first time they've had a revenue source or a capital source on which to draw.
When is the last time, if I may, we developed a new park, excluding the Joseph Street ball field?
Otness and
And
Milton
that was
Arthur
done
Park.
in-house for,
How much money? It was just 167, I think, thousand.
Which was all general fund monies transferred into parks.
It was part of the parks budget
Just
for that
as
year.
Milton Arthur Park, the developer donated the land, or,
Actually, we purchased that property.
that's right, with general fund monies, or parkland dedication funds. So the development of the park, the irrigation, all of those things are paid with transfers from the general fund or a general fund capital account into Parks and Rec capital. It's just,
yeah, and I don't feel.
Parks doesn't have any revenues upon which to build parks.
Yeah, and I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I mean, really strongly. I just saw this as let's develop these parks, and I thought, well, let's develop these parks.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to have the discussion. At this point, since the resolution's already been drafted with this,
The wording.
with the continuing funding of the HERC, I'd prefer not to cause staff to have to redraw that and hold up the approval of this project, of the fund transfer to the building of the parks. I don't want to withhold that.
So
That's how I feel about it.
Nothing else has changed except that wording.
Exactly.
It's been added.
Okay, so all of the approvals and everything is still exactly the same. I'm totally comfortable with it the way it sits.
Okay.
Well, let's move it on for council vote then, the next meeting.
Thank you. Consent or?
We can't
I-
because the resolution.
I think it's.
Oh, we can.
Huh?
We can. We
You
don't have
can.
to put it on general.
It doesn't have to be on regular unless you want it.
I would suggest regular, again, a little publicity of what we're doing. People that missed the last meeting.
Yeah, I
and
don't.
hear that we're going to do
especially
this.
if it's going to be presented in conjunction with Mr. Park's donation, that's a good
There you go.
way to,
All right.
for Dwight to get some PR, right? That's a good thing. That's always good, right, Dwight?
Yes,
It's no bad publicity.
there is bad publicity.
Can be bad publicity.
I heard mud in East City Park is bad publicity.
Well, every year when it rains at Renaissance Fair, it looks like there was a tank battle there, and but it always seems to heal up by Rendezvous in the Park. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you.
That's the last item on our agenda today, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we're now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.